Okay, so we're back. This is the second podcast, and we're going to continue this one, talk a little bit about food webs. Okay, so we had our single food chain, starting with the sun, I should say, to our producer, to our consumer, to our secondary consumer. That's one single food chain. It's linear. We only had a few organisms. A food web is more complex. Okay, so what we can say is our elk/deer, okay, they are the primary consumer. They're the herbivore. Well, do we think that they only ever eat grass? No, of course not. There's probably a flower that they eat that is their favorite flower. Okay, and so they will consume that flower also. So now we see that in a food web, it's going to be all of the feeding relationships in a certain area. And this one is very simple. Obviously, it doesn't contain all of the members of the food web. Now, on the flip side, is the wolf, bear, cat/organism, is it the only thing that eats the elk or deer? No, of course not. Okay? So in any food web, there might be a large cat, like a cougar, or there also might be a bear. This is my bear right here, and you probably can't see these very well with the flip cam. But this bear right here, okay, he also will eat the deer or elk. Okay? But the bear might also like to just chew on this flower or the berries of another bush. Okay, they eat berries and stuff like that the elk will eat also. Okay, the bear might eat a moth, and they do eat moths in the fall when food is a little bit scarce. They will go up into the mountains and eat moths and butterflies because there's a lot of protein in those. Okay, it might eat the moth that eats this same flower. Okay, so we have to look at the dynamic here. All right, this is the first level of the food chain, the producer. They make their own food with energy from the sun. But this bear could be a primary consumer if it eats the flower. But it could also be a secondary consumer if it eats the elk that eats the grass. Okay, so this makes it this is the primary consumer, the bear is the secondary consumer in this case. But, all right, it could also be a secondary consumer if it eats the moth that ate the flower. Okay, so the bear eats the moth that eats the flower. So in this case, the moth is the herbivore, the first level consumer, and the bear is the second level consumer. But it's a different food chain than when the bear ate the deer that ate the grass. Okay? Now, I could also put an arrow from the grass up to the moth. Okay? So this could be a single food chain, from the grass to the moth to the bear. This could be another single food chain, the flower to the moth to the bear. Another different single food chain could be the flower to the elk to the bear. Okay, so this food web has a lot of different dynamics. It has a lot of different members of this food web, and they're all interrelated. Okay, if there are so many elk, and I have two top predators, all right, we're going to be able to have fewer top predator organisms because there's only so much elk to go around. All right, if I were to take the bear out of this picture, then there would be more food for the wolves, and subsequently we could have more wolves in this food web. So it just depends. There's only so much food to go around, and depending on how many members of this food web there are, they have to basically divide up the food amongst themselves. And so you can only have so many members of a food web or a food chain. All right? Another dynamic that can change. If this was in the Arctic, okay, up north, where they have very short seasons and less food, we are going to see fewer members of a food web because there is less food to use. On the flip side, if this was a tropical rainforest, there is food year-round, and a lot of it. There are a lot of nutrients, and there is a lot of rainfall, okay, a lot of moisture. And so there will be more food to spread amongst the organisms, and so I would tend to see more organisms in a tropical food web than I would hope to see in an Arctic food web. Okay? Our next video will be on the available energy. It will be on the energy available in the energy pyramid. Okay, so the rule of 10, the pyramid of numbers, and the pyramid of available energy, and what happens to that energy as we move up the food chain.